Welcome to week 2 of Digging Deeper. And I am so excited to talk to you guys about this sermon. I have some friends here with me. This is Chad. Chad, say hi to everyone.
Hello.
You know Chad. He's our online pastor. And this is Brittany. Brittany is our e-groups pastor extraordinaire, and she does many other things as well. And last week was your first week of Digging Deeper, and I gave you an introduction, and then we gave you the questions to discuss for Pastor Stephen's sermon last week. This week, we're jumping right in, and we are going to discuss the sermon. I'm going to show you a clip, but first, I want to know, did you take paper notes? Do you have one of our amazing Digging Deeper journals? You don't have to have this journal, but it has some really cool spaces for you to take notes and questions for you to reflect on throughout the week and with your group. So it's not too late for you to grab a copy of this journal as well. So, but I hope you got your notes, and no shame if you take notes on your phone. Actually, after I did the introduction, you guys, I felt kind of bad. I was like, I think I went too hard on people for taking paper notes because I'm so passionate about taking paper notes.
Yeah.
And so if you take notes on your phone because you like to have them in your pocket all the time, that's okay too. Okay? You take notes on your phone, but you have them on paper this week.
I felt so bad.
Chad and I both, we were like, oh no, we're totally taking paper notes.
I gotta get the journal.
I was just imagining people in their e-groups discussion and some like really stubborn person saying like, I take notes, but I take notes on my phone. And if you're, look, the point is for you to take notes. That's the win, okay? Right. So I hope you have your notes out. I hope you're ready to discuss this incredible sermon, Try Higher. Take a look at this recap.
There are some things in our lives where we have a desire. I like to call it a cycle. It's a cycle where I get inspired, I try, I get tired, and now, well, I tried. So they try to get in, they can't get in. This is me. Every time I try, I'm inspired, I'm trying, I try harder, it gets heavier, This is what keeping the law is like. This is what trying to be right with God through your works is, right? This is trying harder, heavier. Inspired, let's take our friend to Jesus. Tired, he was heavy. Well, we tried. When they could not find a way to do this because of the crowd, now finish the verse. They went up. The Spirit of the Lord says, don't try harder, try higher.
Okay, so also I have to say for all the note takers out there, were you stressed that Pastor Stephen did not give us a title?
I just thought it was long. I thought it was a really long
I know,
title.
I was like, I don't know where to write it
I was so stressed because I don't like to start until I have like things that I write on my notes. Like I always write, like not that you can see this, but I always write PF with a heart at the top. PF for Pastor Furtick. And then I always write the date, and then I always write the title at the top. And so I was like, is the title with God, there's always a way, by faith I will find it. And they didn't put it up on the screen. So I was like, he must not have given them a title. So I titled it By Faith I Will Find It. And then later we were told the title is Try Higher. The title is Try Higher.
There you go.
Which came in the middle of my notes where I wrote, don't try harder, try higher.
That's right.
God, this was such a great sermon.
So good.
I cried, confession. I just had tears because it just really ministered to me. So that's my first question that I always, anytime I'm discussing the sermon, it's so easy because all you have to do is say, what was the part that spoke to you? Or the way that I wrote it down was, what was the part of the sermon that was just for you today? All right, Brittany, tell us.
Okay, well, there's a lot, I feel like, but because you're asking me to pick the part, I'm going to go with the part where Pastor Stephen was talking about I'm inspired, and then I'm trying.
Oh, the
and
cycle.
And then I'm tired.
The cycle.
And then I tried. Do you remember that?
Yep.
And
inspired,
I don't know.
try, tired.
I wrote it down. You can see this like circle. I drew it like this, and I don't know how you take notes, but that's how when he was saying, like, that's how I do it, right? Like, I'll be like, okay, I'm really inspired, and then I'm trying and I'm tired, and then I tried, and then like 6 months later I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm inspired again.
Yeah.
And then it's like this cycle
Right.
that I totally get stuck going around and around in, and I don't think I had language or even a visual for it until he was saying it, and I was like, oh man, that's exactly what it is.
I know. And it's so frustrating when you get to that point where you're like, well, I tried. And I loved how he talked about, but did you really try?
Well, that was the
Right.
part, I wasn't even going to go there because I'm like, why did you do this to us? Because I'm
Right.
like, when you think about it, most times you're like, oh, I tried. As he was like talking and preaching, I was like, oh,
but did I
you know
really?
what? Did I really try? Like, I'm like, oh, I tried that, workout thing. And I'm like, oh, I tried it. Oh, well.
I
And it's like,
tried.
did you really try? Or, oh, I tried to get like my attitude right about this thing. I tried, I did.
Yeah.
And then, but did you really try?
Yeah.
And the truth is that with the way he broke it down and the perspective from the scriptures, probably not.
Right. Like how the men, they came to the door and they could have said, I tried.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
but they had to go higher. They had to find another way.
Exactly.
And I just think about how many times I've heard people say that I've tried, or I've
Right.
tried everything.
Yeah.
You know, I've tried everything with this child. I've tried everything
Yep.
in my marriage.
Yep.
I've tried
Yep.
Yep.
everything to lose weight. I've
Yep.
tried everything to be a better person,
That's right.
or to. I've tried to be in an e-group. Maybe you're here
Yeah.
again. Maybe this is your second, your third try. Did you really try?
Yeah.
It was very convicting.
And then the perspective of when they went higher, that's where Jesus was able to heal the man.
That's right.
And then when you look at that in introspect, you're like, wow, like, how much am I missing out on God moving in my life because I'm not willing to push through and go higher?
Yeah.
And so that's the thing I'm sitting with this week. Not going to get teary-eyed, but I'm like, okay, coming from a life this week, Pastor, all right, I'm going to go higher. I'm going to do it.
But that goes into my part, that the thing that spoke the most to me is when Pastor was saying that they went up, try higher, there's plenty of room on the roof. And I was thinking so much about that because there's a lot of room in areas where people aren't willing to try the most, try the best. And I always get convicted of that because I want to make sure that I'm doing everything that I can, but it's a lonely place where people aren't giving their all and where people aren't trying their best. I mean, I start thinking, like, what are the areas in my life where I'm not making it up to the roof?
Yeah.
Like I'm stopping short of the roof.
Right.
And if I just would have made it up to the roof, what is that? And then I start thinking, well, if it's not, like, I think trying is fine, but if I try everything that I can, there's some sort of, like, it's painful, like I'm working through something. And so some stuff that feels easy to me, I'm like, well, I'm not really even trying then, if I'm not, if it's not challenging me, if I don't feel any pain in it. And I think about Pastor uses these analogies all the time about working out. Like, you say, you're not going to go to the gym and be like, well, I tried, but it's like, did you go through the pain? Did you go through the hurt to get the result? And so I just love that whole thought of there's a lot of room on the roof. There's a lot of room for people on the roof to try and try and try, but you're really just not getting there. You're really not doing everything you can.
Yeah. Okay, so the point for me, it's funny because we didn't plan this out, but it actually kind of is going in order, was I love the part where he said, it's heavy when you try harder. And then he said, you got to go up.
Yeah.
And this just really ministered to me this week, because I actually had been thinking several times this week, just a situation that we've been going through of just feeling like it's really heavy. And I even said it to God a couple of times this week. I was like, God, this is really heavy. It just feels heavy. And so when he was talking about the 4 men carrying the paralyzed man, and how heavy that must have been, and how they had to take that heavy load up. And I automatically thought of the verse. I should have looked it up because I don't know why I didn't. It's I think it's Psalm 121, and it says, I will lift up my eyes to the hills from where my help comes from. My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. And automatically God just downloaded that verse into my spirit of just, it's heavy, but you got to look up. You got to go higher. You got to go above everything that you're facing, all of the, because remember when he said, this part like was so amazing when he took the second half of the verse off,
Oh,
and
right.
he said,
Yes.
when they could not find a way because of the.
Right.
And you can fill in the blank,
Yes.
whatever
That's right.
your blank is. I almost wanted to make that one of our questions.
Yeah.
How are you blocked? Where are you blocked? Because he said because of the addiction, because of genetics, because of divorce, because of debt, because of abuse. But then I thought, that's kind of a lot to ask people to like sit and talk about in a group. Like,
Right.
I feel blocked because of this certain situation in my life. But to think of what is the thing that you feel blocked, and it feels heavy to know that you can go higher.
Well, because when you're blocked, or I was thinking when it's heavy, it's like the natural reaction is not to go higher.
Yeah.
Yes.
The natural reaction is to go lower.
Right.
It's
Go
like
lower
when it's
or
heavy,
turn
it's like,
around.
I gotta like
Yeah.
set this down. And
Yeah.
like, man, this is really dragging me down. So it's counterintuitive to look up and like, oh, it's heavy. Oh, I gotta go up there. But there's so much power in that, because again, that's where it's like I feel like, man, God's like, please, like let me help you in this.
Yeah.
Let me help you. And we're like, I got it.
Right,
And
right.
I'm slinging it over my shoulder. But to look up is just not the natural reaction,
Yeah.
at least that I have. I'm
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
typically like, oh crap, this is heavy. That's where I'm going.
Yeah,
No,
let me
I'm
take
like,
this
I'm
up.
like, dude, I gotta
I
set
agree
this
with you.
down. Like,
That's
this
the hard part.
Yes,
Yep.
exactly.
Can this be our bonus question this week? I mean, you do this sometimes where you'll just drop little bonus questions that we get to do on our own time.
The one
in
that's
private.
just for yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe we should do that.
The one that's just for yourself. Just
this
take
one's
some
really
time
good.
to write it out, to like fill in that blank.
Right.
When they could not find a way, when I could not find a way because of the, fill in the blank, and then
Yeah.
just take some time journaling and praying and thinking about, okay, here's where I feel blocked. And this is the thing that's so heavy to me right now. And how do I lift this thing up to Jesus?
Yeah, I love that, because I can look back and still remember moments where I sat and journaled with something like what you're saying in my own private time. And I can think about back in, this was 2013, I can still remember the sermon when Pastor preached about it's not a project, it's a process. And I remember, because we've talked about my issue being a perfectionist and being like, oh, I can't check this box. No, but it's a process. I'm still growing.
Right.
Or even when I was ready to take myself out because I felt like I couldn't get something right, but he preached later actually in 2013. And I'm recalling this from years ago.
Right.
Because I spent time with it where he talked about you have a circle of control.
Yeah.
And then when you can't do something, like you can do all the things that are in your control, but there comes times where you have to like draw a circle outside of that. And then that's in God's control. But that is implanted in my brain because I sat with that sermon.
Because you took the time.
And I wrote in my journal and I wrote in my notebook and I let God work on that in my life. And so when you drop something like that, or when Pastor preaches something like that, I'm like, you need to sit with that.
Yeah.
Because I'm telling you what God can do through that processing and how he can transform you. And again, this is years later.
Right.
10 years later, I can still remember how God worked through that. So you really need to spend time with that question.
And I remember feeling like while he was preaching, thinking like, okay, take it higher, but how? Like, what does that look like? What is that? What is that practically? How do I practically live that out? And while I'm having these thoughts and these questions, of course,
yes,
he gives us the high five.
the high five.
High five.
High five.
I really love the high five because he gave us these 5 points on how to try higher, right? So I don't know if you got them. I'm going to give them to you one more time. The prayer, priorities, partners, permission, and praise.
Yep.
And one of the things that we're going to ask you to do is to go around in your group and to talk about which one of these things is your strength, which one of these high five are you really good at, and which one are you going to commit to growing in this week. I want to high five everybody who's watching this right now because you're doing number 3.
That's
right.
right.
You're here. You're here in a group
That's
of
right.
people, and you're trying to connect with
That's right.
people. And I feel like that is one of the most important, essential ways for you to go higher, is to know that you have people in your life that
Exactly.
are cheering you on, that are praying for you, that know the things that you're going through, and a place where you can be vulnerable and sort of just process. So high five, you're doing number 3. I want us to go around, and you can pick which one. Like, it's really important to talk about the ones that you're good at. I think it's easier for us to just jump right in and say, oh man, I need to work on prayer. I need to work on, but to express what you're good at also takes a lot of vulnerability.
Yes.
But it gives you a connection with the people in your group. So don't be afraid to say the one that you're good at just as easily as you might say the one that you're weaker in. Okay, so
great.
let's all say our strength.
Okay. Okay.
Chad, you start.
Okay. That's tougher for me to talk about the strength. I would say priorities. I feel like I have a good handle on what I need to do and when I need to do it. Just in my life, hey, I need to prioritize this. I need to prioritize this. Except when it comes to the area that's my weakness, which is seriously, I mean, like, I feel like I have a good handle.
So yours is like a double-sided coin.
It is a
or
little bit because
both sides of a coin.
Do you want me to just say my weakness then?
Is your weakness priorities?
No, no, it's because you're like, well, if it's a priority, why is this a problem? Because it is the partners for me, where it's like in the group. Yeah, like this is great, and especially in a season when we're like, okay, we're gonna dive in for 5-6 weeks and do this. Aside from that, for me, it's tough because I'll go in isolation when I'm dealing with something. I'm like, I don't want to, like, I don't naturally like go out into a group and hey, let's get together and hang out. That's tough for me to do. But it's so important. I mean, we've been talking about it a lot today. These groups are so important for that. But that's where I would say the priority doesn't work when it needs to be like that.
Yeah. All right, so my strength is praise, because I feel like I've gotten in a really good rhythm in my life where when I feel heavy, I know that the first thing that I have to do is get some music on and get my heart, get my eyes higher. And it's a go-to for me. So I might be, anytime, it could be when I wake up in the morning, if I'm feeling heavy, I got to get a worship song on. It could be I'm driving in my car, and when you're in your car by yourself, I'm not necessarily like a music person in my car. Everybody, you guys all know I love my audiobooks. And so sometimes it's quiet in my car, and then I start thinking. And so when I start getting heavy, I gotta put some praise music on. And this morning before we came to church, I was listening to the song Praise, which just makes me so happy. So my strength, I would say, is praise, but I actually feel like my weakness is priorities, because I loved when Pastor Stephen said, let go of the outcome and surrender to the process. I feel like so many times I want to tell God how this needs to turn out. And the men, when they brought their friend to Jesus, they're like, make him walk, heal him. He's paralyzed. That's the problem. And Jesus didn't heal him first. He forgave him first. And so I think a lot of times I come to God and I'm like, you got to fix this. And God's like, well, there's something else that we need to fix first. And I often have a hard time surrendering that.
That's so good.
How about you?
My one that I would say is my strength is prioritization. As well. I feel like, I've learned that in an ICU critical care setting. I've learned how to like prioritize things, and as I've gotten older, gotten married, got a family, we have an amazing job, and I feel like I do that fairly well, the balancing act and prioritization, especially in different seasons.
Yeah.
I've found my little hacks, like I know I can't win at everything all the time, and I've done that, which is super interesting, because the one that I feel like I lack in, where I feel like I give myself permission not to win everywhere all the time, the one that I still struggle with is permission. And so for me, if I'm like, okay, which one am I going to be working on? It's definitely that one. And in my brain, I'm trying to process exactly like real time why, but I think some of it's, like my natural personality. I'm really hard on myself. And so sometimes, even if I have their permission, I might not realize it, or I might be so afraid to mess something up that I might not step fully into what I already have access or permission to do. And sometimes, though, like 100% of the time, you're going to lose something that you don't try it at all.
Yeah.
But I think it's also just like, as we're processing, I love this because I'm like, wow, that is definitely a weakness of mine, because I do have a lot of authority in what's been entrusted to me. And I just don't always take, honestly, it's poor stewardship when you boil it down to like not fully accessing all of it.
Yeah.
And so that'll be the thing I'm working on.
Okay, we could sit here and talk on, and we might after we turn the cameras off, but I want to give you guys time to talk in your group about the sermon and how it ministered to you this week. So I'm going to give you the slide with the questions. I'm going to read them to you first. I'm going to give you the slide. Your e-group leader is going to leave them up, and you're going to go around the circle, and you're going to share just like we did. It doesn't have to be long. You don't have to go on, but it's so important to share and to let the people in your group hear what God is speaking to you, because you never know if what you say ministers to someone else that's sitting right there. So don't be afraid to speak up and to say what you feel like God is speaking to you this week through this sermon. So here are the questions that you're going to discuss. The first one is really simple. What part of the sermon was just for you today? Then the second one, tell about a time when you were blocked and God made a way. So you can just think back. You don't have to talk about what you're blocked in right now. That's your bonus question for this week for later, okay? But maybe you can think back to a time in your life where you were blocked, but God made a way. And think about how that's going to minister not only to you, because it's going to give you faith for what you're facing right now, but also to the people who are in your group. And then the last one is one we just discussed. Of the high five, prayer, priorities, partners, permission, and praise, which is your strength, and which will you commit to growing in this week? All right, I want to give you time to discuss this with your group, and then make sure you come to church next weekend, you hear the sermon, you come right back here so that we can talk about it again. I hope you have a great week, and we're praying for you, and you're going to have a great discussion. We'll see you next time.